Hello, my name is Professor John Benjamin. This is West Virginia Wesleyan College, and this is Game Design. And today I'm going to introduce you to Unreal Editor. So assuming that you've already created an account and it's already downloaded on your computer, you can open it either using just going right to the Unreal Engine or going to Epic Games and clicking on the upper right-hand corner and saying Open Unreal Engine. Let's do that. Okay, so when you open Unreal Engine, Unreal Editor 4, the first thing you're going to do is get to the Unreal Project Browser. And so this is a visual record of all of your previous projects, which you can divide by names, and you can see a little screenshot of them. And it's where you'll create a new project. And so you can see here that Unreal Editor has lots of different capabilities: film, architecture, and automotive. But we're here to create games, so we're going to make this selection. So select games and hit next. And then you'll come here to the project browser. And so this is very exciting because it comes with all of these really splendid templates: handheld AR, twin stick shooter, 2D side scroller, puzzle games, you name it, virtual reality. So it's really excellent that it just kind of gets you started whatever genre or type of game that you'd like to. So I think for today, though, we're going to start with a first-person perspective. So just go ahead and click on first person. You can see here's the template that it's going to set up for us, and then just hit next. Now, the next screen we're going to run into is the project settings screen. And so typically you're just going to leave this. It's going to remember the last setting that you used. But the important thing to notice here is blueprints versus C++. So blueprints is a type of visual scripting that Unreal Engine has created. They noticed that there was a whole area of really great creative minds that weren't making games. Only people with computer science degrees were. And so they created a visual scripting that actually just writes C++ for us. So we can go ahead and create coding without actually coding it. We connect the nodes, and then it writes the C++ for us. But if you are a computer scientist, you can go ahead and start with C++, but for the remainder of this course, we're going to be using blueprints. So just have that checked. You typically want to have maximum quality. Typically, you don't want to have ray tracing enabled, so you want to have that disabled unless you are planning on creating a really high performance game. Desktop and console is fine, and typically we want to start with starter content, so we have some objects to start with. The next most important thing is where you're going to keep your files. I recommend a documents folder. So click here and look for your documents folder, and then just go ahead and create a folder that you can keep all of your content, particularly if you're working in the lab. So you can always find your content, and hopefully other students aren't going to mess or tinker with it. So just go ahead now here and right click and create a new folder, and just give it your name. I'm just going to call mine J. Benjamin Game Design. I think that's a good folder name. Select folder. And then go ahead and label your projects, something intuitively that you can understand. So, naming this one 1, something intuitive, something that, you can create a list and you can easily navigate project. Okay, and let's create it. All right, and here we are. And so once that loads, let's take a look at this interface that we have here. It's set up typically, as most software programs are. There are toolbars and panels and some sort of viewport or stage. All right, so let's take a look at how ours is set up. So this is what we refer to as the level editor. So we are making edits to the level. This is a level 1, if you will, of this particular template. So the first thing we're going to look at here is the toolbar. We'll be referring to that a lot. This is where a lot of our important tools are going to be placed. We'll talk about that more in detail. This is known as the toolbar. This is known as the viewport. The next most important area over here, this panel is your modes panel. Currently, it usually defaults to place actor mode. So these are all actors that we can place into our level. The next most important area here is the world outliner. Now you can see there's a whole bunch of objects in this level, and they are all listed here. So this is a great way to navigate and to quickly look at the different actors that you have, especially when things get really complicated. So like, for instance, I could click on the floor without just clicking on the floor. I'll select it in the world outliner, or let's say here a big wall over here. So I just want to select that. And it's really important to properly name these. So give them intuitive names so that you or your team knows what you're working on. You'll quickly find out that if you don't properly name your actors, that you'll just have 30 cubes and you won't know which one's which. So it's really important that whatever their purpose is, that you give it a good intuitive name. All right, and you of course can turn off objects to better navigate and look into and beyond and behind them. All right, next is the details panel. So if I select a particular object, let's say like this white cube here, in the details panel is where I can change or modify that particular actor. The most important one is right here at the top, the transform. So you can go ahead and scrub or type in a precise number and change its location. So on the Y, X, or Z axis. You can also rotate and scale. Now you can hit the lock button here so that you can scale, uniformly scale it up or down. Now, a really important thing to notice over here is these little yellow reset to default buttons. So I can click on that and it'll go back to its default size of 1 by 1 centimeter. I can click here and it's 0 rotation, and if I click here, it'll zero it to my level, the 0 degrees for my level. So I actually want to bring it up a little bit. I don't want it to be underneath the floor here. So those are really important to keep in mind. Okay, and then last but not least is the content browser. This is a series of folders to organize your content, and we'll explore that a little bit more here in a few moments. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the different modes panel. Like I said, here is the modes panel. It's in the place actress mode, but you can change the modes here to landscape, foliage, brush editing, or mesh paint. Again, typically we're going to be in this mode. But let's take a look at how you can manipulate or change this configuration of this interface. So one of the things is you can slide the panels and change their shape together by rolling your mouse over and waiting till the gray highlight rule pops up. And then you can change the size, like so. You can also close out any of these panels. So let's say here my message log. I just click on that little X right there. Now if I accidentally closed out my world outliner and I don't know where it is, I just go to the window over here and I look for my world outliner and it opens it right back up again. So that's important to keep in mind. You can also minimize these by right clicking and saying hide tab and then just clicking on the little yellow corner to unhide it. So again, all of these are just space saving measures that you can take to maximize and customize your interface. The viewport itself. So let's look at some of these controls. The viewport controls are divided up into here. This area is basically what you could see and how to see it. And this controls the manipulation of the actors. We'll talk about that in a moment. So first off, we just have this drop-down menu, which has a whole host of things. Like you can change to different layouts to look at different things in different ways. But for the most part, we're going to keep this as it is. Just want to point out that it's there. This is very important as far as aligning things. So right now we're in perspective mode, but we can go to top mode. And if you want to scroll out, you can start to see your objects. And if you can't see anything, of course, you can just go to your world outliner and then just select an object, let's say the floor, and hit F. And then you can see everything. And then you can just scroll in and then right click to maneuver around. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to move this particular box actor and I wanted to put it, let's say this actor right next to it. So I can go ahead and align them together from a top view. I can also go to a left view, make sure they're all lined up in that perspective, and so on and so forth. So typically we're going to be staying in perspective view. All right, and then we can also change how we see things based on how we're designing, if we want to focus on certain things. So typically we'll be in lit, but we can go to unlit, and we can just see the objects as they are without really any shadows or textures. We can also go to brush wireframe, just like in the orthographic views. And detail lighting, so that way we don't see, let's say, the different textures of things. All of this can save processing power, but it also can help us focus on how we're looking at our particular design. So that's as far as we really want to go, and we'll just keep lit in mind there. All right, and then finally there's show. We can turn on or off different things to focus on other aspects. So we can turn off all the static meshes, all the skeleton messages, things like this. You can turn on and off the grid, and that's all right here in the show. So we'll just say use defaults. Okay, so that is how we can look around in the viewport. Next, I think what I'd like to do before I talk about the snapping tools here is how to maneuver inside this space. So first, I'm going to show you how to maneuver and how to play the game. So you want to test your game out. This is an iterative process. That means we are constantly building, designing, and playing, and constantly testing out as we move on. You don't want to build an entire game and then test it. So it's a lot of testing. So we're going to hit the play button here next, if you will, because we're going to test out this little template. So you can just hit play here. You can also hit, I think, Option P on a Mac or Alt P on a PC. And now here we are in the game. So how do we maneuver? Just like any PC game, we use the WASD keys. So W, sometimes you've got to click to get it started. W to move forward, S to move back, and A and D to move left and right. You'll click and use your mouse to rotate in this way, so you can move and then rotate as with your mouse. And then you can spacebar to jump, and you can jump on objects. That one's a little too big, I guess. Yep, they're all a little too big. Oh, yeah, that one. There we go. And you can left click to shoot. And you can see all these objects have physics already applied to them. Some have more, like it's a larger object, so my shots aren't going to affect it as much as a smaller object. And then when you're ready to go back to designing, you just hit the escape key. All right, here we are again. And I'm right-clicking to rotate. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the ways to navigate inside this environment. As I just mentioned, right-clicking the mouse allows you to rotate. So there's 3 different ways to do this when we're in the design level mode. First is just using your mouse, and you'll need a 3-key mouse or a mouse with a scroller. And so again, right-clicking is to rotate, and if you click on the scroller or the center mouse button, that will go up and down and side to side. And then you can also scroll to zoom in and out. And then left-click is moving your mouse around like so. So you can move it forwards, backwards, left and right to rotate, and you can travel around using your mouse itself. That's a pretty nice, nifty way to navigate. Now, if you're used to 3D modeling, and particularly using programs such as Maya, then you would choose the second form of navigation by holding down your Alt key. And I believe it's probably your Option key on a Mac. Could be the Command key, though. I'm not certain. So if I hold down my Alt key, or Command key, or Option key on a Mac, and then I use my 3 mouse buttons again, it divides it into a very clean, different space orientation. So holding the Alt key and right-clicking, I can scroll back and forth with my mouse to zoom in and out. It's a very simple zooming. And holding down the Alt key and then clicking on my middle mouse button or my scroller, and that moves up and down, side to side. And then lastly, left-clicking is rotating. So you can see it's very precise ways of rotating, moving, and zooming. And of course, the scroll button always works there as well. The last way to move is to just use your WASD keys. If you like to move that way, to get a kind of a sense without hitting play, you can just hold down the left key on your mouse button and then just use W to move forward, S to move back, and A and D to move left and right. So those are the 3 ways to navigate around in this space. Yeah, and that's all for this lecture.